I'd like to address three areas, and I'd like to start with the topic you were just discussing, the topic of drones. In your response to Senator Paul yesterday, you suggested there may well be circumstances in which it is permissible to use drones to target a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil. I'd like to explore those circumstances, and in particular you pointed to two. You pointed to Pearl Harbor and 9/11, both of which were extreme military attacks on the homeland. I want to ask a more specific question. If an individual is sitting quietly at a cafe in the United States, in your legal judgment, does the Constitution allow a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil to be killed by a drone?
For sitting in a cafe and having a cup of coffee?
If that individual is not posing an imminent and immediate threat of death or bodily harm, does the Constitution allow a drone to kill that individual?
On the basis of what you said, I don't think you can arrest that person.
The person is suspected to be a terrorist. You have abundant evidence he's a terrorist. He's involved in terrorist plots. But at the moment, he's not pointing a bazooka at the Pentagon. He is sitting in a cafe. Overseas, the United States government uses drones to take out individuals when they're walking down a pathway when they're sitting at a cafe. If a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil is not posing an immediate threat to life or bodily harm, does the Constitution allow a drone to kill that citizen?
I would not think that that would be an appropriate use of any kind of lethal force. We would deal with that in the way that we typically deal with a situation like that. We would expect
with respect, General Holder, my question wasn't about appropriateness or prosecutorial discretion. It was a simple legal question. Does the Constitution allow a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil who doesn't pose an imminent threat to be killed by the U.S. government?
I do not believe that. Again, you have to look at all of the facts, but on the facts that you have given me, and this is a hypothetical, I would not think that in that situation the use of a drone or lethal force would be appropriate, because the possibility...
General Holder, I have to tell you, I find it remarkable that in that hypothetical, which is deliberately very simple, you are unable to give a simple one-word, one-syllable answer, no. I think it is unequivocal that if the U.S. government were to use a drone to take the life of a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil and that individual did not pose an imminent threat, that would be a deprivation of life without due process.
Maybe I have not been clear. I said that the use of lethal force, and I'm saying drones, guns, or whatever else would not be appropriate in that circumstance.
You keep saying appropriate. My question isn't about propriety. My question is about whether something is constitutional or not. As Attorney General, you are the chief legal officer of the United States. Do you have a legal judgment on whether it would be constitutional to kill a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil in those circumstances?
A person who is not engaged, as you've described, again, this is the problem with hypotheticals, but the way in which you have described this person sitting at the cafe, not doing anything imminently, the use of lethal force would not be appropriate, would not be something...
I find it remarkable that you still will not give an opinion on the constitutionality. Let me move on to the next topic, because we've gone round and round.
Let me be clear. Translate my appropriate to no. I thought I was saying no, all right?
No.
Well, then I am glad. After much gymnastics, I am very glad to hear that it is the opinion of the Department of Justice that it would be unconstitutional to kill a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil if that individual did not pose an imminent threat. That statement has not been easily forthcoming. I wish you had given that statement in response to Senator Paul's letter asking you it. And I will point out that this week I will be introducing legislation in the Senate to make clear that the U.S. government cannot kill a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil absent an imminent threat. And I hope, based on that representation, that the Department will support that legislation.
Well, that's totally consistent with the letter that I sent to Senator Paul. I talked about 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Those are the instances where I said it might possibly be considered, but that other than that, we would use our normal law enforcement authorities in order to resolve situations along those lines, and then use the normal things that you do when you try to decide if cops can shoot somebody.
The U.S. government now laying out its legal argument for killing American citizens overseas without a trial. But what about targeting people on U.S. soil? can they now kill American citizens inside the country? The head of the FBI, when asked about that on Capitol Hill yesterday, stumbled around on this.
Does that only apply to U.S. citizen that's overseas, or does that apply to U.S. citizen that's here?
I'd have to go back. I'm not certain whether that was addressed or not.
So that we have clarity here, he is not certain whether it was addressed, whether our government can kill our own people inside our own country. This really needs to be addressed. We can't just answer this question. No, the government doesn't kill our own people. We have a process for this. It's called the justice system. You file charges, you lock them up, you try them before a jury of their peers, and then that's how. They don't kill our own people. Judge, the question is, can they kill our own citizens inside our own country?
Well, the answer,
this is a question we have to ask.
It's not a question that we should have to ask, and it's not a question that he should have evaded answering. I think he probably knows that the answer is no, but he doesn't want to frustrate his bosses who articulated just 2 days earlier that the answer is yes, because at a speech on Tuesday at Northwestern University Law School, the Attorney General of the United States manifested extraordinary ignorance of the Constitution of the United States and suggested the president can kill anybody he wants outside the United States if that person is dangerous, if that person has committed crimes, and if it's impractical to arrest that person. Not in the opinion of a jury, but in the opinion of the president and some secret advisors. The Constitution says to the contrary. The Constitution says if the government wants your life or your liberty or your property, it has to articulate to a jury what law you have violated and prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt to that jury. It's called due process. Without due process, the government could take anything it wanted and kill anybody it wanted. And Attorney General Holder ought to know that. I suggest that Bob Mueller does. And the reason he evaded that answer is because he wants to keep his job.
Well, you heard what Eric Holder said. He said there is due process, but there is not due juris something or other.
Judicial process.
Not judicial process.
What the Attorney General said, let me make his argument. His argument is that there is a substituted form of due process. That if the president and his advisors carefully consider the danger of a human being and conclude that that human being needs to be stopped before that person causes any more danger, then the president can kill him. That's their argument. There is no case law that stands for that. There is no statute that authorizes it, and it directly defies the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Sounds like a crime against humanity. What's the difference between that and what Bashar al-Assad is doing to his own people? What is the difference?
Nothing. What's the difference between killing somebody, an American with a drone in Yemen and killing an American with a drone in Peoria? Nothing.
Right.
Same argument that Eric Holder made at the Northwestern Law School on Tuesday about al-Awlaki in Yemen could be made about somebody in Peoria tomorrow.
You make an illegal lane change in Hollywood on the 101 freeway, and a drone will just shoot you out of the sky and throw you, bury you.
Well, I don't know that it's going to come.
I don't know either, but who'd have thought we'd ever get to hear?
Who would have thought that we'd even be having a conversation like this? That the head of the FBI would hesitate to answer a question that is so imbued in our history and our law and our values, due process precedes punishment, that he can't answer that in public.
And we're worried about contraception.
Correct. Correct. We do not have our priorities straight. The last time the federal government claimed that it could kill Americans was in the Civil War. And even Lincoln said it could only be done during combat. This federal government, this administration says it can kill Americans when they're riding with their children in a car in a desert.
The XT-908 area drones watch over our citizens.
That your rights to trial by jury are precious, that no American should be killed by a drone on American soil without first being charged with a crime, without first being found to be guilty by a court, that Americans could be killed in a cafe in San Francisco or in a restaurant in Houston or at their home in Bowling Green, Kentucky, is an abomination. I don't rise to oppose John Brennan's nomination simply for the person. I rise today for the principle. The principle is one that as Americans we have fought long and hard for, and to give up on that principle, to give up on the Bill of Rights, to give up on the Fifth Amendment protection that says that no person shall be held without due process, that no person shall be held for a capital offense without being indicted. When I asked the President, can you kill an American on American soil It should have been an easy answer. It's an easy question. It should have been a resounding and unequivocal no. The President's response? He hasn't killed anyone yet. We're supposed to be comforted by that. The President says, I haven't killed anyone yet. He goes on to say, and I have no intention of killing Americans, but I might. Is that enough? Are we satisfied by that? Are we so complacent with our rights that we would allow a president to say he might kill Americans, but he will judge the circumstances? He will be the sole arbiter. He will be the sole decider. He will be the executioner in chief if he sees fit.